Right, it's time to get pumped up about goals. That sounded really cheesy and kind of probably not working. But anyway, glad to be back with you. My name is DJ Eshelman. Good Friday. Actually, not Good Friday literally, but it's a good Friday. I guess Good Friday is coming up when we're filming this for sure. But yeah, it's actually St. Patrick's Day as I'm filming this, so that's why the green. Although I will confess that that was not my intention when I got up today. I just happened to be wearing a green shirt for St. Patrick's Day. I just thought that was kind of cool. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about my system for achieving goals. And that can be a complicated topic. Obviously, that's why I split it up into a lot of different things we've been talking about all this entire month. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background before we really dive into this, and why that I think that especially people in information technology should be paying attention to this. And that's because honestly, I spent a lot of time in my life not really truly living up to my full potential. It wasn't really until I started embracing these concepts of setting and achieving goals, not only at work, but outside of work as well, that my career really started to take off. I was a happier person. Even during times when I was left happy, I was able to keep going because I had the patterns of this in my life. I say all the time, actually, I'm going to put this up on the screen because it's that important, but, oh, maybe I'm not. My apologies. I am actually the wrong set of visuals. But write this down. If you're and you should be taking notes today. You should absolutely have a piece of paper and a pen. If you need a moment to go get that, take that. But if you already have that ready, write this down. And that is my kind of one of my mantras of living, and that is that you will not rise to the occasion. You will only rise to your level of preparedness. Let me say that again. You will not rise to the occasion. In other words, yeah, we have this romantic notion that we're somehow going to just be ready all of a sudden and meet our goals, right? That's not the way life works. That might be the way that you work in dreams. It might be the way that you work in stories. It might be the way that Instagram portrays things, but it is absolute BS. It's not true. Okay. You will not rise to the occasion. You will only rise to your level of preparedness. And so, the reason I'm doing all this, the reason behind me sharing all these things with you, is that I truly have figured out that there are ways to achieve, even working in IT, where you don't also always have a grip on your schedule necessarily. There still are ways to achieve. And it really comes down to what you do in the margins of your life. And that's why I'm calling this In the Margins March when I'm broadcasting this. But we'll go on with this concept. This is just the beginning. But I really want to make this a theme for this year. In fact, my theme for this year is I'm going to put this up on the screen: focus. Follow one course until successful. Follow one course until successful. And that is my really central theme for 2023 when I'm recording this. And I've had other themes for other years. Sometimes I didn't have a theme at all. I just kind of went with it. But this year I have a theme, and that's what it is. So I wanted to set that up as saying, there are things that you can achieve in those margins. And so this system is how I've done that. So in the last year, um, I will say that my life has been a little bit traumatic in a lot of ways. I just did had a lot of things going on that just were not fantastic. Well, this feels weird. I'm gonna put some mood music on or something like that, so to kind of have some background here. I forgot to set that up, so let's get that going, shall we? Maybe. There we go. Lovely. All right. So what we really want to set up in general, though, is the concept of um, uh, not working. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. Sorry. Let me back that up a second and start this over. All right, so I want to introduce these concepts of in the margins, but the key here is knowing and having a strategy for what to do when things get random. And last year for me was an extremely random year. For those of you who don't know, I am a consultant by trade. That's what I do mostly. Working on changing that this year. Actually, that's one of my goals. One of my focus goals is to finally get to the point where I'm truly teaching others how to do this kind of stuff. So I'm not having to do it all myself kind of thing. So that is one of my goals for the year. So that is we'll kind of get into that a little bit maybe later. But the bottom line is that what I have found last year, especially in the midst of being very discouraged and depressed, things were not going well professionally or financially for myself and my family, and so it was a very tough year, but I was still able to keep going. And like I said, it was because I had this preparedness, this kind of system that was keeping me moving forward, even when I had no real desire to move forward. Even in those times where life was just overwhelmingly hard, I was still able to keep going. And so this system really kind of, I guess you could say, if you want to be overly dramatic, as I sometimes am, that this system literally saved my life. And so that's why I want to share it with you, because I think more people should have this acumen, if you will, this way of being able to pull upon experiences and make them into habits, and then make those habits more permanent by practice. Because remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And so once you have good habits that you can form into practice, that's when they become permanent. And so it becomes automatic. And so for me, a lot of these things are automatic. And so I get kind of random talking about them. And I'll apologize that in advance. But the reality is these kind of things are really important for people that are working in IT to really get nailed down. Um, so yeah, that's a big piece of that. So I think yeah, there we go. Having some weirdness going on with my system, so I do apologize. Yeah, try and make this great um, oratory and all that kind of stuff, and end up not like going like you think it's going to. But I'm not operating off a script here, folks. I'm just off the cuff. This is all live, and so that I apologize for the randomness, but the way it goes. So let's go with a little bit of review, shall we? So what we talked about initially was why we're doing all, which I just kind of reiterated, kind of refreshed a why, which is that I want you to be prepared for those times when things are tough. But also, I want you to be able to achieve things even when you have other people setting priorities for you during your workday and during your other parts of your life, where you feel like you don't have uh, the time or sort of like that. One thing I didn't talk about that I feel like I should have in the scheduling session is, what is time? And we think of time as something that's like this external force that is forced down upon us. Well, I have news for you, ladies and gentlemen, and other invited transgendered species. Time is a construct of our minds. Yeah, I know. We have watches and we have things that click on our walls. I had a time that I was doing this. But as far as a concept, time is a construct of our mind. And so you can see this phenomenon when you're talking to a bunch of friends and you're enjoying yourself, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, 3 hours have gone by. Those same exact 3 hours can feel like an eternity at your job, right? That's because time is a construct. It's oftentimes very much how we feel about it affects the amount of things we can do at that time. And there's lots of data and opinions on this, but the thing I want you to get today is the bottom line is that you are in control of time. You really are. As far as your attitude towards it, your mindset towards it, you are the narrator of that story. Okay. You are the person who is ultimately going to make it happen or not happen in a amount of time. This is the notion we often say when it comes to scheduling things, when it comes to all of these things we have in our lives. They really are a construct. And so that's what I want you to really get into your head. So let's go off of some things here. As far as that time management goes, I think we'll maybe get back into the 4 quadrants next week when we do the wrap up. It's very important. If you haven't seen that, look at the video that is titled Taking Control of Your Present to Rule Your Future. But I did want to go over our goal setting system because it's going to be very important for this particular discussion. So what we're going to be talking about is smarter goals, right? And so let's go over that again really quick. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time bound, which in the context of what we're talking about here can mean not only on a calendar or on a schedule, but also the way you think about it. You have an ownership of that instead of just saying I'll get to it when I get to it. Okay. We also want it to be exciting, and we want it to be relevant to you, not just to someone else. And so that is the smarter goals. So what we talked about, and let me pull up the screen here. So we got into this in a previous session where we said, okay, what were these SMART goals looking like? And they might have some various things. And if you can read my writing, congratulations, you are among the top 1% of the planet. I can't even read it sometimes, especially when I'm doing it on an electronic tablet, which is why I kind of prefer paper a lot of the times, but we'll kind of get into that a little bit as well here when we continue here. But anyway, so this is one of the examples of you can start with a generalized goal that you have and get it really specific by applying this formula to it to the point where you have a very tightened down goal by the end of it. And so I used a couple of examples of, weight loss, things like that. This notion that I mentioned earlier about wanting to teach people what I know how to be successful. That is another thing that is going to be a goal of mine for this year. And so I'm working towards that. And I'll try and weave in some examples of that today, actually, of kind of showing you how we break this down. So those are the goals themselves, and a lot of times these goals have very specific time frames, like having shed 45 or 43 pounds of visceral fat by August 15th. So I'm ready for certain events that are going on in that time frame, for example. Or maybe I could say that I need to have launched a process by a certain amount of time to fit in with another time frame. Or just as a personal look, if I don't do this in this time frame, I know I'm probably not going to do it because I know myself. Those kind of things happen, right? So that's how that works. Let's go on to kind of a breakdown of we've said, okay, well, what do you break down a goal into maybe quarters or a year? And so I gave an example of how we might be able to say, okay, instead of just saying I have this goal I'm shooting for it, and every day I'm making myself guilty, I feel guilty and actually depressed about how long it's taking because I'm not really fully taking into account the fact that I should be breaking this down into smaller and more achievable chunks. And so maybe in a thing like weight loss, it takes a bit of time to get to each place. And so you have a momentum that you're building. So maybe an entire first 3 months of the year, you're, just focused on 10 pounds because you need to get your body into that place like I do today. That's why I broadcast from here up, ladies and gentlemen. But in any case, these are the kind of things that you do to break these down. We're going to talk a lot more about this today because it's a key part of the system that I use. So this is a concept that's really important. If you need to go back and watch that video and get that information. But we'll talk more about that here in a moment. We also talked about kind of the concept of splitting things out into a quarterly system of 90 days. So maybe we break out a calendar and we say, okay, how much are we going to do each month and that sort of thing. And today we're actually going to break this down even more and see how that system actually works. So be ready for that. And like I said, if you don't have a piece of paper, thanks. If you don't have a piece of paper and a pen, this is a good time to do that. You can also take notes on an iPad or whatever, like I'm doing. Feel free, but as long as you have something to be able to express yourself today, we're actually going to take some time that is going to be important for that. Okay, so just be ready in that regards. So, in the last session we talked a little bit more about scheduling, and I wanted to introduce the concept of having a schedule that is actually I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I realized in my doing this that I introduced some concepts that I was going to talk about today, and I kind of caught myself off guard and ended up just saying them anyway. So we're talking more about this today. But anyway, the concept was, hey, look, we have some items on our schedule that we know we have to do. They might fit into certain quadrants that are important um, for our work, right? So in terms of that, you might have a quadrant 2 activity, which is things we want to focus most on, of meeting with a client in my case. So I actually gave these are examples from my schedule that day, actually. So I met with my first client for 4 hours. That's a quadrant 2 activity. It's something that's actually, other things could have interrupted that if it was more urgent, but it was something that's how I make my money. So it's important. so things like that. Then I had lunch with my wife, which is what we call a quadrant 4 activity. It's not urgent, but it is important. It's kind of one of those things that has kind of a balance point where it's not only important to our relationship, but it also had elements of it where it's not as important, but it's good for social kind of relationship building. And so I called that more of a quadrant 4 activity in the end. I kind of had it classified as something else, but we kind of settled on that being a quadrant 4 activity. And then other quadrant 2 activities like this live broadcast is a priority for me, but I could have preempted it. Then I had some tasks that I was working on, and this is the key here, is talking about these little time frames where we can fit in tasks that we can work on, margins. And so really what this comes down to is the top 3 for me and top 3 for them. So like for example, I had some client priorities that like a document that I was working on. So that would be something that's not a priority for me, but it is a priority for those that are paying me to have priorities. So that would be a thing like that. This can be something where you get items assigned to you during a Scrum meeting or a morning or weekly stand-up. Those kind of things fit into those top 3. So you just basically say, what are the top 3 things I can work on today that help me with these goals? We're going to talk a lot more about that today. So I'm kind of glad I introduced that concept, but we're going to introduce how to fine tune that concept a lot more today. And then you have things for yourself, and that's what we're going to be hopefully focusing most on today is how to break down things that are important to you and that sort of thing. So let's dive into this here. So hopefully that was a good overview. So what we're going to do at this point is I'm going to start talking about some of these concepts, and I'll just bring myself back over. We'll just leave that there for now. We'll just let it chill for a little bit. So what we want to do is, we already talked about this those SMART goals a lot of times are yearly goals. Sometimes you'll have a list of these, and honestly, I think a mistake a lot of people make is having too many goals, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they can be if they overlap too much and they cause you to get overwhelmed. And so I find, generally speaking, when it comes to setting yearly goals, I try to only have 3. This is just for me. It may be different for other people. And sometimes what that means is I might have certain things I want to achieve, and I can kind of lump that into a category and make that into something where I can say, okay, well, if I achieve this one thing, is there something else in that other category that I can achieve as well? Or would that build on something else? And an example of that would be writing a book. Okay, writing a book. Okay, I can do that in a year. Could I publish a book? Well, yeah, I could self-publish a book. So I could write that book and self-publish it within that same year, right? Could I make a audiobook out of that? Well, yeah, I could. Could I make a course out of that? Yeah, I probably could. I already have that material in my head, and actually, that's a big driver for the big signature course that I'm putting together as kind of an expansion of that. But actually, for my first two books, I do have companion courses already for those, and so I have all those things that lined up. Now that might have been a year goal, but it took about a year for each, and so it actually works out pretty well. But what that means as far as being a smarter goal is that I don't necessarily have a goal in that year to write a book. The goal is to have a topic that I have a whole ecosystem built on, right? I know that might be way over a lot of people's heads. You have no desire to write a book or anything like that. I'm just talking about my examples. You might have other things going on in your life where you find you can kind of stack those and challenge yourself to make those goals happen in a certain time bound way where you have milestones for each of those things that are happening that basically cause you to go through that smarter process a lot differently than you normally would. So that's just mostly just a point to ponder. But at the same time, when it comes to setting yearly goals, like that's why I try to have a minimum of yearly goals that I really go towards. Um, I know some people that will have more of a focus on moving quarterly goals, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Uh, and I find that to be sometimes effective, sometimes not. I actually tried that system in 2021 and found it didn't really work as well. And then going into 2022, it actually caused some discouragement in my life. So I don't necessarily know if I fully prescribe to that, but some people it works better for. So if it works better for you to just say, okay, I'm just going to say every quarter I'm going to set goals. That's great. If you're the kind of person who is um, what do they call that? At the beginning of the year, you set your New Year's resolutions. Sure. For the record, that is not what we're talking about today. And you will rarely hear me talk about that. I think it's a good thing to set yearly resolutions and things like that, but those aren't really goals typically. Those are things you want to work on in yourself or things like that. And that's typically why they fail. This honest truth is most yearly resolutions fail within the first month because, again, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll only rise to your level of preparedness. And so, if you're a person who wants to achieve yearly goals, then you need to have a system in place to do that, right? So, this is what live looks like. Okay, so in terms of that, okay, so yes, not necessarily a yearly resolution kind of thing or a New Year's resolution or whatever, but I have a friend that actually did succeed by setting quarterly goals, which mostly means that every quarter she was evaluating what she was doing and made quarterly resolutions for herself, which I think kind of worked for her, mostly from her personality. Now I like this because it can set up a notion of practice and kind of getting better and better about that, but also giving yourself enough grace to move things around, which is something that I have been experimenting with more and more, but not necessarily. But what I'll say about that is that for myself as an entrepreneur, I can't necessarily do that, and I'm going to see if we have the time to break this down a little bit this time around, and I'll kind of demonstrate to you why that can be problematic to have those moving goals move too much. So the the other notion here is that of breaking things down. So that's what I really want to focus on with this. It's not necessarily about um, saying, okay, this is too big to tackle. I'm going to split this up into necessary goal and into pieces. That is appropriate, probably for, I would say, about half of the goals that I have in my life. It's more about saying, okay, what milestones do I need to reach to, and do I need to adjust those milestones at all? Do I need to adjust my strategy or my tactics to match that appropriately? And so it's really is more about that, of saying, okay, what pieces do I need to be working on, and do I need to make up some time? Do I need to do anything else? So you're just revisiting this every 90 days. So let's say, for example, at the beginning of the year, you've set a bunch of goals for yourself the year. Went through your smarter process, and you know that you have them, specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time bound, exciting, and relevant. Did I miss something there? Yeah, of course. But each quarter, you want to actually take some time, and for me, this is just like typically on like a Sunday afternoon. And I will say, okay, let's have a look back at the last 90 days, and are there anything I need to catch up on? Is there anything I need to improve on? And is there anything at this point that I think I need to either do the keep or kill uh, strategy on? That might be a little harsh language for some people. For me, it's easy to remember it that way. But the reality is, you want to determine whether or not you want to stay doing an action, or if you need to adjust your tactics on that. Okay, um, and I don't always like having the tactical discussion about 90-day plans. That should be more strategic, but in some cases it does meet with that overall notion. That's especially with habit goals and things like that. I'll give you an example. So I mentioned earlier the goal of losing a certain amount of pounds of visceral fat, and so I had a strategy that I was using for that. Right. Well, I'm now not down to the end of my quarter, and I'm unfortunately I have to report that although I'm feeling better, which was a big reason a why for that goal, as far as the fat loss component of this, my body looks pretty much the same, and so and it from a measurement standpoint in my watch here, there's only slight differences. So I've gained a little bit of muscle, but I've still got a lot of fat. And so it actually, it's measurements today, and it looks like that my numbers have been climbing back up again. Actually, not just today, a couple days. It's been climbing back up again. So there's something in my overall strategy I need to adjust so that I can tactically every day make those decisions, which we'll get into here in a minute. But overall, a 90-day plan, a 90-day review of that is going to prove that out. And so when I at the beginning of next month, when I sit down, actually hoping this will take place in front of a pool in Arizona, in Scottsdale, Arizona, for the UC Masters retreat that's going on end of this month. I'd say you could register for it, but that's pretty much closed at this point. But my goal is to actually start that process, if not do the whole thing, at a pool, in a relaxed environment where I can say, okay, let's take an honest look at where I'm going and what do I need to keep or kill to make these goals happen this year. Okay. So that's going to happen. So that's just a review process. It's very much not a, I don't like feeling guilty, but I do like feeling convicted. Okay, so that's that part of that 90-day plan, to do those reviews. In fact, we might even say review as far as that goes. It's very important. So in terms of that, what you'll also want to do is at the beginning or the end, whatever works best for you, every month, you'll want to do a monthly review and say, okay, what are the things I need to adjust tactically, and sometimes strategically, but honestly, it's what do I need to keep doing, improve, or what can I celebrate that I've done well for this? But at this point, what we're trying to do is break down tasks into smaller chunks. So much like we talked about previously with the breaking down the goals into smaller chunks here, this is what we're going to want to do each month as well. Is we're going to say, okay, how much do I need to do each month? And so maybe it looks like 5.25 pounds of fat lost in a month, right? So that might be what that looks like. Or maybe I need to adjust that based on what I haven't been able to do so far. Those kind of things. So that's the important piece of that. I'll make that freaky thing out of the way. Okay, so that is that part of it. So what we'll want to do is, oh goodness, we want to every month take a look at these things, and obviously, like I said, celebrate your wins, celebrate the things that have gone well. Okay, it's important, but at the same time, we're going to want to have some honest looks at what we need to do to make these goals achievable for this month. And so we might have, in this case, a breakdown of saying, okay, let's say I have something that is I can use some project examples of this, but it might get into the weeds a little bit too much. I'm going to keep with the weight loss example just because it's an easy one to do in that regards. Is saying, okay, let's say I have, I'll just do some simple math here. Let's say we have 4 pounds to lose over that month. Well, we got 4 weeks in the month. We can just divide that and say, okay, we have 1 pound per week. That's our strategy for that week. And so each week we kind of nail that down and say, okay, 1 pound, 1 pound, 1 pound. Okay, we have that in our overall plan, right? And so we're also taking into account things that are going to be happening at this point. This is when we start looking at, okay, what events are going on? Do we have anything that's going to hinder our ability to do these things? Or is there anything that's coming up that we need to meet a deadline for? Um, if I am giving a talk at an event, for example, well, I need to make sure I've prepared for that, right? In a couple different ways, not only in my personal goals to set aside time for being able to focus in on that, but I also need to prepare the talk, right? I need to actually rehearse, and I actually need to get my material nailed down and things like that. So it's in these kind of areas that I'd say, okay, this is when I'll be doing the preparation work for this. This is when I'll be doing the practice for this. This is when I'll be doing the kind of the editing phase for that or whatever, and then I'll be delivering it. Whatever that looks like, you can break that down into smaller chunks and say, okay, I'm going to do this during these time frames, and then you can set milestones for yourself when it comes to that. Um, so that when you are kind of working in the margins a little bit, and you're able to say, okay, these are some things that I need to do for that week. We'll get into how to actually, the weekly review is probably one of the biggest things about this whole thing. So I'll get into that next. But by and large, you want to have some time set aside where you can actually look at these things over. And so some people will do it like middle of the month. Some people do it end of the month, first of the month. Whatever works for you, just do it. Just get it scheduled, get it on the schedule, and get it done until it becomes habit so much that you just naturally just do it. So that's very important. So anyway, what we want to do here is now get into the weekly planning. And what I like to do at this point is say, okay, when it comes to all these goals that I have, when we have all these things nailed out for the monthly tasks, each week, what are the top 3 things that I need to do? And you might have 2 different sets of top 3s at this point. You might have, okay, I know for my job, I need to have written this document and deployed uh, this set of technology, and trained this person on something or another. Right? Those are 3 top things that are going towards much bigger goals in those projects. You might also say, okay, when it comes to personal life, let's say I have to put some weight loss things in there. So I'll put a top 3 goal of saying, you know what, I need to make sure that every day this week that I make sure to have 250 grams of protein each day. And so I'll just make that a habit goal, or a daily achievement goal for that week, and put that into my top 3. So this is a priority for me this week. Something I'm looking at. Or it might be something like reading a book or something like that. So it's like, well, I want to read a chapter a day, and so my top 3 is going to be to read chapters 1 through 7. or 1 through 5 or whatever that looks like. That's my top three. So I'm breaking this down into smaller chunks and then putting those into a priority for the week and saying, okay, that's important for me. Now, it might be something like, well, I've got a presentation that I've got to get done. I've got to do all these other things. And so you might need to bump another thing down from your top goals and to say, put those into kind of a grab bag of in the margins tasks. Okay. Those things we just kind of say, okay, well, I have a list of things that I can be doing, but they're not my top priorities right now. And so I do my top priorities and then, okay, top priorities and then top three and then the grab bag. That's how we do the in the margins. So that's actually going to be our next breakdown of daily. But it's really important to have these top three lists so that you know kind of what you're looking at and be able to quickly focus every time you're making these decisions. You've got to already got it in mind. You've got it in writing. Studies have shown time and time again that when you write something down, it actually becomes much more connected. You are, I think it was the number is something like 60% more likely to achieve something if you physically write it down every day. If you physically write it down. So that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter if it's on a tablet necessarily, but just typing it in or just having it copy pasted doesn't work. And actually, I'm going to, if I can figure out how to do that later on, I'm going to show you kind of what I've been experimenting with the iPad here and why I'm going to be abandoning that system and going back to a physical planner probably at the beginning of this next quarter. Because what I found myself doing with the pad is that I'm using a pen or they call it a pencil on an Apple, don't they? I'm not an Apple guy, so this stuff frustrates me. So they call it an Apple Pencil. Whatever. It's a stylus. Dang it. It's a freaking stylus. So in writing these things down, there is some connection that I have, but I'm finding it's not as deep as if it was on paper and right in front of me in that way. So I'm actually going back to paper that I've been doing. In fact, behind me here at the very top, right behind Captain America here, you'll see a bunch of they look like books, but those are quarterly planners. And so that's going to be that. But writing these down in all these phases, writing these down. But I'm finding that the weekly planning is when the writing makes the most sense, because what I'll end up doing sometimes is taking some things that I wasn't able to do the week before or didn't get fully achieved that I need to bump, and I'll have to write those into another area and not in my top three. And there's a visceral connection with that I feel that is missing in technology, and the studies are backing that up. So write those down. In fact, let's get into the top, the daily. It might seem like a wasteful thing to write down the same thing if you have a daily goal. Writing that daily goal may seem repetitive and unnecessary, but what do we say about practice? Practice makes perfect? No. Practice makes permanent. Okay. So the more we practice doing this, the more we write down our goals, the more permanent they become to us, the more connected we are. And if I have to write something that should be in a top space down below, like I said, that has a feeling for me. It connects on an emotional level that I've had to write that in a different space. Or also, along with this, if I have to write the same thing over and over every single day to remind myself to do it, there's a possibility that I have set a bad goal and I need to reevaluate that goal. If I'm just not doing it, and there's an example of this that I have to admit in my life right now, there actually is something that I've been writing every single day in my planner. Okay, I gotta do this. I haven't done it. It's called taxes. And yeah, I just haven't made the time to do that, and the time is coming, right? So there's little things like that too, that sometimes that needs to be a priority. It can't be dismissed. I don't generally like jail. I never spent time there. I'd really rather not spend time there. So there's that. But um, yes, and writing things down physically does have a greater impact. Absolutely, it's a big difference as far as that goes. Um, so, in terms of the daily goals here, what you want to do is find a way to write those every day. At the beginning of your day, usually is best. In fact, I like to take some time every morning and set aside time on my schedule to actually have a little bit of me time, like meditation, prayer, study. All these things fit into that time, but also getting these things written down during that time. What are my priorities for the day? And kind of you're set upon what you're going to be focused on that day by doing that action. So by writing it down every day, it really does wonders to focus that. Um, and I will say that the proof's in the pudding, I guess you could say. What I've been able to achieve in times I've done that and times I've not done that is pretty blatant. The times that I've written down priorities and broken things down properly every single day, I've done great things. You know, I've had books published. I've had talks given. In fact, I had a day in 2020 that was kind of impressive with that in regards to this. I actually managed to give three talks in a single day. One was in Madrid, one was in Boston, and one was in uh, somewhere in California. I can't remember exactly, but I wasn't physically there. But because I had myself organized well enough, I was able to do that. So it was really cool to be able to have that practice really come into play with things like that. But if you don't get things written down and don't have like that attitude of saying, okay, what are the top things I need to be working on today, then you will just end up cruising YouTube, looking at long-haired guys in green shirts, spouting nonsense. Wait, no, that's not right. Yeah, it can happen. It's happened to me. It happened to me yesterday. I spent way too much time on YouTube Shorts, which is basically a lot like TikTok, only you don't have to have TikTok installed. But I'm finding the same impacts. It's just like scroll, 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 scroll. I should have been working on a document. It was in my top three, and I ignored that, and I shouldn't have. So, confession time with Deej. There you go. So, basically, in a nutshell, what you want to look at here is saying, okay, I have the top three for me, top three for them, right? But you're breaking this down so that you're meeting your weekly goals on a daily basis. And so you're saying, okay, three for you, three for them, three for you, that sort of thing. You're making this real in that regards, of saying, okay, I have my top priorities for the day. Well, maybe my schedule for a certain chunk of the day essentially belongs to someone else. Uh, this is a big challenge in information technology, actually, because you run into scenarios like I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast that I had some trauma last year, and that trauma was largely caused by the fact that I had to widen my schedule quite a bit. So my day was starting around 6:30, 7 a.m., and then ending about 7 or 8 that evening. Now, I'm not trying to say that I was busy that whole entire time. What was actually happening was I had client meetings that were spread out over multiple time zones. And a lot of times, what was happening, unfortunately, this is still kind of going on this year. Just I think it's just uh, a a problem in information technology. Again, one of the main reasons I wanted to do all this is that I was finding people canceling appointments with me at the last minute. And that has a couple of things that is tragic. One is that a lot of projects just ran out of time because they kept canceling on me, right? So their day-to-day priorities got overwhelmed for them, and so they had to push me off and say, I'm working through an emergency. I'm working. It was like a daily thing. I'm working through an emergency. I can't work with you today. And for me, it was frustrating because I hourly essentially when it comes to consulting work, and so I wasn't necessarily getting paid for that. But it also meant that I had to fragment my calendar in such a way that there was a high likelihood that I might have a 2-hour meeting that just suddenly gets canceled at the last minute, and I'm not even to figure out what to do at that time. So having this attitude of saying, okay, I have some top three things today, and if especially if I have unstructured time or I suddenly have unscheduled time, this allows me to grab from that group of priorities first and say, okay, my top three personal priorities, I can grab one of those and just work on that during that time, so I'm not just sitting there cruising YouTube, which last year actually was a problem. Actually, that unstructured time made me feel more and more like I was not in control of my life, and actually led to quite a bit of depression. And the more people we've been talking to in information technology over the last 3 years, that's what it's felt like. I feel like they're on all the time, but they're not necessarily. It's not like they're busy all the time. They're just mentally on all the time. Like they feel like they have to be having their Outlook open the whole time, and they have to have Slack or Teams open all the time, and it's like a constant like checking it. I'm clicking my fingers. I don't think I have this AI voice stuff that's you might not even hear clicking, but you it works really well. It's called Crisp. Ask me about it sometime. But the reality is that people are more distracted is probably the wrong way to say it. And overwhelmed really doesn't say it correctly either. It's more of just switched on and can't find a way out. So this system allows you to say, okay, if I can not just distract myself, but actually make myself goal oriented during those times, then now I'm in control. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm now a victor. It's uh, what's this notion of being proactive with your schedule instead of reactive to it. And like I said, I found very much so this year, especially as I've been much more proactive about those sort of things, that I was able to reduce the stress of that. I don't feel so unimportant when people have to cancel a meeting. It's more like an opportunity now. If I allow that to even happen without consequence, now I'm setting better agreements of saying, okay, well, if you cancel last minute, you'll still be billed for it, that sort of thing. I am working on that too. We talked about that in one of our weeks to very much to set agreements rather than expectations, right? And so essentially what we're doing when we're writing these things down, we are making an agreement with ourselves, and sometimes if it's a top three for others, it's an agreement with others too of this is what we're going to be working on today. So when it comes to your daily scrum meetings or stand-ups, things like that, this is a key time where you want to say, okay, with a manager or whomever, it might be a good idea to say, to work this out with them, to say, okay, just so we know, just so we're saying this, these are my top three things that I'm working on today. What do we need to do to accomplish this? These are my top three priorities. You might find that it's one of those things where it's like, hey, okay, Mr. Manager, I have these things that are going to have to be that are our top priorities today, but I have all these things scheduled here. What should I be doing with those things that are scheduled? Like, do I really need to attend the meeting on network changes when everybody else on our team is going to be there as well? Do I need to be there, or could I just be informed of those things afterwards? Getting that agreement instead of just having these expectations like, no, everybody goes to every meeting. You might find that there is some leeway there, some things you can change by having those discussions and making those agreements. And so that's a key here with it comes to these top threes. These are making agreements and making your, again, time being a construct of our minds. This is what makes that real. Okay. It's like we said, very, very beginning of this whole thing, what gets scheduled gets done. In other words, if you literally, sometimes this means you are putting on your calendar, blocking off time to work on a top three goal. Very often. In fact, that's something that I do. Well, this is a Friday when I'm filming this. And so one of my goals every Friday is to do admin work, status updates to my clients, billing for my clients, all these kind of things that have to happen. I've gotten into a better habit right now of doing these on Fridays. I'm not trying to scramble and do them Monday. It doesn't always work, but what does work is when I put it on the calendar and say, "Hey, at 3:30 every day, I'm going to make all these updates happen and just spend that half hour working on that part of what I need to do." And so in my top three, I might call it admin. I might call it billing. I might just call it status updates or um, whatever it's called. But becomes a top three for that day. And I thought about showing you my schedule today, but there's some confidential things in there, so I can't really do it. But that's pretty much the way that would look. Is I would have a top three item for today, or top priority for the day, of saying, okay, that needs to be done for today. And I've actually already halfway through the process. I had some spare time this morning. I had a meeting that ended early. And so, once again, a meeting ended early. That means I have like a half hour or whatever. I think this is actually an hour. And so I said, well, okay, well, I could either just, go uh, be lazy or do something else, or I could kind of view that time as a gift. So now I have an hour on the watch that I didn't think I would have before. So my watch just buzzed me. I'm trying to get moving. Apparently, it doesn't like the fact that I'm standing here talking. Sorry, watch. Another time, perhaps. The reality is that we have now a grab bag of things we can and to grab when we have these times. But now we can say, okay, that's my top priority. Billing, status updates. Boom, I grab that. Work through a status update. Okay, I'm now a little bit more ahead on that one for the day. Right, I still got some things to do, but I'm ahead. Right, so little things like that are really what makes this work. This can be done in the professional world as well. You might have some things that are, you know, uh, even once you get through your top three, you might have extra time. You have like a grab bag or a kind of a parking lot. You can kind of see down below here in my December section here. I've got a parking lot for all my scheduled or the things that are unscheduled that are like, okay, if I have some time this year, these are the things that it would be cool to do. So I have that grab bag of things that say, okay, well, hey, I've got a little bit of time, or things went well enough that I don't have to focus in on that as much anymore. I can just let that roll, or whatever that looks like. In some of the uh, Citrix things that I do, sometimes it looks like, oh, well, we had scheduled some time because I'm a person that tends to be very proactive about things, and I know how things can go badly, and we need to have time set aside for when things go badly. Sometimes they go fine. I had a project like this recently where it was one of those great projects where everything just fell right into place and there was no issues, right? So I was able to get that done a lot faster. But what I was able to do is say, okay, here's our list of ordered priorities, and we just grabbed from that and said, okay, well, we've already got our notepad published, and so all right, let's go on to the next and just keep rolling. And so we got ahead of that, and actually we're able to and not only finish ahead of schedule, but have some time for some value added things at the end of that because of that. Now, if we had just said, well, it's not on the calendar yet, so we can't do it, let's just not. That might not have happened. Now, that being said, in information technology especially, that isn't always what happens. In fact, I've got the flip side of that exact same kind of story, where it's like, well, okay, well, we've got all this stuff good, we're ready to go, but we're waiting on some storage to be allocated. And so we can't do the rest of the things that we need to do to make this a reality because we're waiting on that. And so then it becomes, okay, well, what else can we do from the grab bag? And so I had to kind of reevaluate and say, okay, what kind of things can we be doing that normally I'd be doing afterwards, but wouldn't have a dependency on this. And so I kind of went into a little bit of uh, some people call that project management. Uh, I guess it is. I don't always view it that way. I kind of view it as more of just achieving those overall goals, but whatever. But anyway, I was able to say, okay, well, if we can get proactive with these other things, then we can get those done. Well, it turned out that our overall delivery of the storage side of things was very delayed. And so we actually ended up only meeting the goal of completing the project because I had taken those other things that we could do ahead of that weren't necessarily a dependency, or just something that was a normal thing to do afterwards. And so the more proactive we were, the more we were able to achieve the overall project. And so we were able to reorder those top three goals for those days that we were working. And that's exactly how that worked. So, like I said, it's very important for us to have that notion. So, what I want to do now is to put this into practice. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'll take a quick break, breathe, and we are going to draw this out from a couple of perspectives. One is working on breaking down goals into to other chunks, right? And so live math is going to be interesting on this, but we're going to do this. Let's see. We need some inspirational music here. Wow, that's very inspirational. Let's take that down to that level there. Hopefully that's not overwhelming. It's always hard for me to tell because I'm not listening to the stream. I'm just kind of looking at bars on the screen. So let's hope for the best here. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to break this down into a few different sections, right? So let's say we have for the year, let's say we have for the quarter, and then we have for the month, and then we have days, right? Finding if I'm patient with my pen, it eventually straightens out the line for me. Ta-da! Look at that. We are doing great. Okay, so let's say we have our. Let's break this down first with the weight loss goal, right? So our goal is 43 pounds by August 15th. Basically, right? We're not trying to get overly fancy here. I kind of am with this just because, well, I felt like it. Being very precise and just to show you that we should be very specific about our goals and make them measurable in the right kind of ways, right? So what will happen with this yearly goal is we might split this into 3 different quarters, right? So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. And I think what we said here previously is that we would take this into 10, 20, and 13. So now we know we can split this up a little bit more, right? So we say, okay, this one now goes into 3. This one goes into 3. This one goes into 3, or actually 1 in this particular case. So we say, okay, every month we need, so we have that month. Oops. My bad. Or that quarter, I should say. That's that quarter. And then that quarter. And then that quarter. So I lost my inspirational music. All right, so let's say that we know we have 10 pounds. So we write down, we reiterate with that monthly goal. Each month we have 10 pounds that we want to do for the quarterly. We write that rewrite that down. Say this is, are we still good with 10? Okay, let's do that. So now we break that down into each month. Let's say that the January, let's make that goal like 2. February, well, let's say we could probably make that 4, right? So now we have, in March, got good momentum going. We can say 4, right? Now, let's say in this example that what actually happens is we do 1, and then we do 3, and then we meet our goal of 4, right? So we're a little behind. So now what we need to do is review, right? And so we say, okay, hang on a second. We can't just do our normal goal of 20 for this quarter. Now we instead need to do 22. So review might say 22. Or we might say that's a little unhealthy. We're going to actually push that down to the next. And we'll keep 20, and we'll just make sure that the last few weeks we're really pushing it. Well, in a case like this, obviously, in 2 weeks' time, losing 13 pounds, probably not going to be very healthy. That's why it made this actually a pretty bad example. But you get what hopefully you get what I'm throwing down here. So let's just say in this particular case, we're like, okay, you know what? Quarter 2, we're gonna have to really change our patterns here. We're gonna have to do some extra things because we actually we not only want to achieve where we're behind, but maybe we're gonna have to do even a little bit more because now we have a little less confidence that what it would take to do 13 being, basically 7 pounds in a week, we have less confidence that that's going to be a thing. So maybe we can make this, more achievable by making it essentially, 6 pounds per month, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, yeah. So whatever that looks like, and if that means we need to say go back to our smarter goals for the year and say, you know what, 43 pounds by August 13th is maybe not as viable, but we'll kind of mark that for review at the very end here. So after review, we come to the conclusion that, you know what, we think about 24 pounds is going to be viable, right? So we say 24 pounds. All right. Here's something else is going to happen. I'm actually going to wanted something peppy and going, but I didn't do this quite right. So I'm hoping I can get this going. Oh yeah, sure, it worked. Oh, whatever. It's all good fun, right? Okay, so let's say 24 pounds is our quarterly goal for Q2. Now we've adjusted that. So now a Q2 review, which rhymes, is 24 pounds. So let's say our new goal is that in April, we might say need to bump this up to 6. And in May, we may say we need to do this. And let's say we had a little bit of a bad month, or something like that, and we know we need to keep this going. And by the way, never do live math during a presentation. It never goes well. So here we'll just I know. We'll just let you believe me. Um, but so basically, we know we have 18 pounds to go, but maybe we only did 5 or whatever. So we need to review that. But from a perspective of this, we'll just kind of assume we met our goals. We'll have some positivity here, but we have you know 18 more pounds to go. So we know that pretty much that means we're gonna have to bump this up in May and really get 9 done, and then in June also have to get 9 pounds done, right? In order to keep with where we're at. So that's what that might look like for a month review of getting that nailed down. And then let's say we have, let's say that, just for the sake of awesomeness, let's say that we have actually achieved all this, right? So let's say that we have, um, so we've achieved 32 goals of our 43, right? So we have 11 left to go. We've actually gone to the point where we can actually successfully kind of transition a little bit, or we might know that, gosh, at a certain level, our bodies just kind of stop, losing that much, no matter what we do, or it's getting to the point where it's just like there's not that much more to burn, for example. So let's just say that for the remainder of that month in August, we know we have um, 11 pounds to lose, right? So our review, we say 11 pounds in 1 month, or sorry, in 2 weeks. No. So maybe we just add on another month. And we say, you know what? We're going to adjust the time frame of our goal. So we're going to have the same metrics to meet. We're just going to adjust a little bit to say that we're also going to add in September. New and improved. Right? I just realized that I kind of did this grid kind of badly, and I, you know, maybe should have chosen this differently to work on these goals. But basically, you're getting. Hopefully, this is working, and you can give me any feedback if it's not. I need to revamp this so it actually does work. But of these 11 pounds that we have left, let's say that during this first the month of August, we knew wanted to reach this goal by that time frame because we had some things that are going on in August. We knew that we wanted to be able to kick back with a Mai Tai on the beach, for example, which is kind of along the lines of some goals that I have this year. But there might also be some speaking engagement, things like that. You're going to be out on the road more. You know that it's harder to maintain a level of activity at that point. So maybe we say for August, our actual goal is more like 6 pounds, right? Which gives us another 5 pounds to do in September to actually meet our goal. Okay. So that's the way that would work. Let's break this down a little bit more into, now we have these written down for each month. Well, now that we've written out our quarterly goals and kind of breaking these down on a calendar, and now we do the same thing for our month and say, okay, how can we break this down into a calendar? What does that look like? Well, first week of January, well, maybe you're not going to be losing all that much in that first week. Maybe you're going to be recovering from, some other things you're doing on that first week of January. That's just a reality. So sometimes we might break that down a little bit. But what we want to do is say, okay, now we have a month. That month has, typically between 28 and 31 days. So I hear. So we can actually break this down and say, okay, I've just realized something very, very tragic that I've done here. And that is that I didn't do this correctly at all. This should be weekly. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do 365. Yeah. Anyway, so weekly. So now we have, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have, I'm going to start using different colors because it's going to get really confusing really fast. So we have 1, and I'm just going to start breaking this down like this actually. This is never going to work visually like this. What we're going to do is we're going to say it like this. One, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Now we're talking. And we break down number 4 here into 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Hopefully that's clear as mud. But we're breaking this down even further. And so we're saying from this point of view, we're saying, okay, well, week 1, let's say the goal is to, the weekly goal here is to work more on our heart rate. And we'll say, you know what, it's more important for me to actually get a sense of my heart rate. And that's exactly what I did this year, actually. I have some blood pressure concerns. And so setting a metric of working on my heart rate wasn't really appropriate. Do you see here the tactical shift I'm making? You would think that it's just like, go to the gym, eat better, all this kind of stuff. No, I'm breaking this down now. So I have an overall goal for the month, and now I'm breaking it down into the tactics. So my strategy is to lose a pound for that month. Now I'm breaking it down into the actual tactics for each of those weeks, right? So my first is to say heart rate measure below 140. And that's my only goal. My goal is not to get it up to that. My goal is to keep it from exceeding that. And so I'm learning how to exercise again because I haven't done it in 8 years. It's true. It's just true. So that might be my first thing I'm working on. And then maybe the next week I have a new tactic of saying, okay, now I'm working on getting to the gym 2 times that week. And then maybe that third week, I'm saying getting to the gym 3 times. And then maybe the next one is now I'm adding in something fitness wise. And so I'm saying heart rate is now between 120 and 140. So I'm saying some specific things about now I want to get to the point where I can handle that. 4, now I'm giving a time frame for 30 minutes. So that's my goals for January looked like that, right? So now let's say that managed to actually lose a pound. And I wanted to lose 2, but that, like I said before, that actually was only 1, which is okay. I look at that from a better measure, and this is kind of the video that prompted or kind of sparked this entire series was me realizing that gosh, setting overall fat goals, loss goals is just really poor, and it got me I reset my entire goals for the year once I realized that I had a bad system of measurement. If all I was measuring was the amount of weight that I had, like I stepped on the scale, that was my measure. That was a bad measure because I needed to build up muscle. I needed to get into better fitness and things like that. And so I adjusted my goals for that. It's a quick under 10-minute video to go watch. So you can go grab that at some point. But anyway, that's the rub there is that I wanted to get it to where I was smarter about those goals. And so at the end of January, that's when I said, okay, well, let's revamp our goals So that's story time with Deej. Here we go. So the next thing we did is in February, we took a second look at the overall goals. I said, okay, I sat myself down at the end of January and said, okay, what do I need to keep? What do I need to kill? I kept the um, the goals of going to the gym and everything like that. And what I decided to add was some changes in my routine as far as my day to day, my eating and that sort of thing. And so at the gym I'm going to, there's a nutritionist that I meet with. She's also a personal trainer and that sort of thing. And so I was able to say, okay, what we need to change about what we're doing here to make these goals happen. And she, to my surprise, said you need to be eating more calories. You're not eating enough, and we need to really bump up our protein. And so the thing I added, still doing all these other things, right? I'm still building on my successes here. I'm not just not going to the gym anymore. I'm still keeping those as a thing. And so I'm going to the gym. I'm making sure my heart rate is at a certain rate for a certain amount of time, right? And so now in week one of that, I say, okay, my protein goes to, let's see, I want to say that it was 180 for that, and then 45 minutes on the treadmill. And then I said in the next week, we're going to kind of add on, so same amount of protein at that point, 180, but I was saying 45 minutes treadmill plus 3 weight machines. The next week, same thing, protein at 180, 45 treadmill plus 5 weight machines. Okay. And then I need to write all that. You're getting this, I hope. So in the next week, what I said was, okay, same thing, but I'm going to add in um, 50 minutes plus 5 weight machines. Hopefully this is catching on. Hopefully this is clicking with you. And then because we're running later than I would have liked, I had this set aside, but I want to be honoring of everyone's time as well. What we end up with here is every single day we have breakdowns. And so what I'm going to do, just for the space that we have, I'm going to break this into some. When we're doing a weekly review, we might be looking at our schedule and say, okay, what does this look like from this perspective? And so we might have something that looks more like this. Okay, so we have, let's go from this random week right here, right? And so this gets broken out a bit. And so we say we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I start my weeks on Monday. This is something that I started doing years ago that actually gotten to be a good habit as far as that goes. And so I call this, like, yeah, it's not required. I just find it works better for me. So, and in fact, the planner that I'm going to introduce hopefully next week will actually demonstrate that as well. That works best by starting on a Monday instead of a Sunday. But we'll get to that. So let's say we set up our overall strategy is to have a 3 pounds of loss that week, right? And we want to say, okay, 3 pounds lost for that month. Sorry, for that month. And so we might say at this point, we want to start looking at how many pounds do we want to lose each week. And so we might say that it is, zero point 0.5 here, zero point 0.5 here, 1 and 1, which my math tells me that would be 3. I think our goal is 4, but let's say that's what actually happens, and just because we'll be realistic. So let's say that to achieve this, now we've got some weekly goals. We want to kind of lay out. Okay, how does our week look like? Do we want to be in the gym 7 days a week? Well, that's not really in our goals, is it? It's much more of a 3 to 4 times a week. In fact, at this time, I might actually bump up to 4x per week, right? So let's say Tuesdays are not a good day for us to go to the gym, just because maybe you're like me and you have some classes that go on, some group coaching calls that go on Tuesday nights, right? So Tuesday it might stretch a little bit to have that as a gym day. So maybe we say Monday, we go to the gym. Wednesday, gym. Thursday, gym. Friday, let's take the day off. And Saturday morning, we're gonna go to the gym. And well, if you're like me, make Saturdays into a bit of a spa day, where you do a nice long workout and then have some massage time and some other things that whatever your gym does to kind of reward you. You kind of break that down into that. So that's a gym plus day, right? And so as far as these goals, that's what our week looks like. And so we have some room in the margins here. So we have margin, rest. That's what that might look like. So as far as our time frames go, our goal setting goes, that's what that really truly looks like. Okay. Let's see. Just realized it went silent on me again. Okay. Maybe some um, inspiration to close us out here. But hopefully this has been good. So here's the reality, folks. I've broken this down for you for very specific reasons. And that is because I want you to see that when it comes to setting goals like this, it really is important not only to make them smart, but also to kind of make them into something that you can break down into smaller chunks that are actually achievable for you. That way, each day you feel more and more empowered to do them. Feeling really empowered is really important because, honestly, I don't know many people that have gotten very far in their careers without feeling at least some sense of empowerment. Believe in you. It's just that simple. I wouldn't be doing any of this. I wouldn't be spending this time. I wouldn't be doing all these things if I didn't believe that people just like you can do these things and should do these things. I can't be the only one out here doing stuff. There's a lot of people that I would say the same thing of, that it can't just be about us doing it. It really does have to be all of us working at our capacity, using our talents, developing those into those things that make us unique and special so that we can be people that leave this world better than we found it. I believe that's why we're here. If that's not why you're here, then maybe just find a way to connect with why you are here. But without truly being able to be in control of our schedules, to be proactive, to not feel like a victim, it is really hard to say that you're going to make any kind of lasting impact on this world, whatever that looks like. If you want to be a better parent to your children, you need to be able to say, I got to make a priority for that. I'm going to spend time with them. That needs to happen. You can't delegate that, you can't hire that, and you cannot buy it. You have to do things that actually matter. And this whole thing, this is all about making these things matter for you. Okay? It's all about making it so that you are in control of that. Even if through your day-to-day you have things that are compacting on you at all times and things like that, if you put these strategies into action, then you can actually take control of that and have agreements with that with the people you work with. Very, very important. Hope you got something great out today. It's been a pleasure to be with you. As always, if you have any questions, I'm here for you. Okay? This is what we're here for right here at Thrive IT. So, and me personally. So reach out to me. djeshelman.com is where you can go to find links to, if you want to sign up for a coaching session with me. That's where you would do that. It's right there on the homepage. So djeshelman.com. Double click, go. All right. Have a great day, y'all. And just set a goal today. Just something small, something to break these things down into smaller things so you can leave this place a little bit better than you found it. We'll see you next time.